All right, everybody, welcome to another expert interview. This is actually our first expert interview, part two, partially because my internet sucks and mainly because Griffin has great content. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Griffin, why don't you remind everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Griffin Kirsch. My firm is GK Wealth Management, which is a registered investment advisory firm. And the licenses that I have to manage money and do the financial planning that I do hang with my firm. And independent of all the large institutions that you guys probably all know very well.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate you making more time. I know we always have good conversations, and it was good to golf and just catch up. And I appreciate our friendship. If you guys want to watch part one, scroll up a few videos and you'll see it. Really good conversation about finances, some really good conversations about college and investing long-term and short-term and compounding and all sorts of stuff, all in the finance and money world. Today's conversation is business, right? Griffin, as you mentioned, has his own brokerage. He owns his own company. And he works with a lot of business owners. So I want to bring you back and I want to talk business. You've made some really good business decisions. You have a lot of people around you who are in business. So let's talk business. What's some advice that you wish you had heard sooner?
Well, first off, doing what I do, I work primarily with business owners and businesses. Those are one of the ideal clients that I would identify. And I get to basically learn, I manage money and do the same planning for the most part for these businesses, but all these businesses have different ways of earning money, products and services. So you start to learn a lot about a lot of other industries doing what I'm doing. So now that I have some perspective in the business world, business owner arena, just running business, I think that first off, surrounding yourself with other experts is a pretty key component to being successful in your business, whatever it is. So my world, aligning myself with the best CPAs and attorneys that kind of round out the financial picture that we are addressing for a client is a big deal. And I'd be naive to think that I'm the smartest in all of those other, specialty arenas. So anyways, I would say surrounding yourself with great people that you can trust and lean on for how they complement what you're doing for your end client. And that's definitely relevant for my business specifically, probably most businesses. I think that the traditional studying, through college and graduating with a degree is great. Not required though. I'm in the wheelhouse that, YouTube University is pretty compelling. And most of what I've learned, aside from leaning on some of the smarter people I've surrounded myself with, has just been knowledge I've gained by doing my own homework. And I think a lot of the folks that I see that are most successful are constantly trying to learn more and challenge themselves. So anyways, regarding a background of being able to go to school and have a great upbringing, that sure gives you an opportunity to be successful, but I don't think it's a requirement. And I've seen many businesses be very successful that have very little, traditional upbringing, which is cool. I think regardless of the business, having an idea about money and taxes is very important. Obviously that's, being a business owner is one thing, and I do that for a living. So I get to marry those together in the same, under the same roof, which is cool. But most of my clients that are really well off have some general understanding of money, investments, retirement, credit, taxes, and they lean on myself and other experts for the deeper dive. But those that have taken the time to educate themselves a little bit on how that all works and what have you is it's definitely correlated to them being successful. So knowing your numbers, in all facets is important. I think that would be like the top three things.
That's awesome. And I love that. I love the taking a second to look back, right? Like, what are some of those things like I wish we had thought through? And I love that idea of surrounding yourself with experts, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's your vendor relationships, right? So people you're spending money with, or whether that's strategic partnerships with people that can come alongside you to provide amplified services to your clients, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're adding more value and
Yep.
you're adding value with the people you bring to the table because you're all benefiting and the client benefits. Love
Yep.
that. Love the idea of continuing education. Same here. I just got off another expert interview. That was a huge takeaway, right? Is like, you've got to understand, you got to continue to learn. You have to continue to understand the things that you're going to work with. And your takeaway of, taxes and money, like if you're in business or you're a professional who's growing a career, those are two things that are going to be critically important, right?
Yep.
And if you're making more money, it's going to become even more important. So,
Yeah.
take time, do the research, go learn, right? I love
Yeah. Yeah. And the clients of mine that, um, I think there's a lot of them that are making a great business for themselves, making great money, but there's a handful of them that fit that profile, and then at the end of the day just have nothing to show for it because they've not understood money well enough to allow themselves to be personally taken care of. Businesses are great, and if they are making, they're employing other people, it's awesome, but the business owner, is often overlooking their own planning, and you got to keep yourself in check for your business to be successful long term. And I think that's a lot of America. Most people just don't know how to manage their personal wealth. And someone that has a great business idea and starting a business and growing it is great, but they've got to marry some personal planning and what have you to make that work long term. So
Good
anyways.
advice there too. And I always have to have the conversation with people of the whole pay yourself first mentality, right? You didn't get in business to pay everybody else and
Mhm.
to make money and spend all this money on expenses. Like at some point, the business has to pay you, right? You have to be able to make money. Otherwise, I don't know why you're in it, right? And it is a conversation you have to understand because you mentioned understanding your numbers. Someone may say, I have $1 million business, but we could look at 5 different $1 million businesses in the exact same industry. And one owner could be taking home 500,000 and one owner could be taking home nothing. Right. So you really do need to understand, like, if I'm going to get in business, what do I want to take out of it? Meaning, what do you want to pay yourself or what are you going to take on draws or disbursements? And how do you build a business that's going to do that and then hold yourself accountable to it? Because I see it all the time where you get knee deep in business and the business is growing, the top line for the business is growing, but you're adding employees, you're adding overhead, and your paycheck is actually getting smaller.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's not sustainable if that's the direction it continues to go. And I see that a lot. I have clients that make a lot of money and just have a bank account with nothing in it, no retirement. And I'm like, man, what are you working so hard for? Being a business owner is not a 40-hour work week. It's more, right? So what are you doing?
Love that. Let's talk about property. Congratulations, by the way. It was awesome being at your barbecue and love the new office.
Yeah.
You know, what made you make that decision to purchase it and what allowed you to make that decision?
Yeah. I knew I was going to be doing what I'm doing for a long time. And so my thought was my old office, which was awesome, had continued escalation on the rent every year. Every year it got more expensive to rent. And that's the situation for most renting, apartments or offices, et cetera. So I was starting to think about, well, that's not only money out the door, but not a not a constant number. It's going to be climbing. And that got me interested in finding out, well, can I afford a building? So funny you ask, because at the time I was kind of throwing it out there, that thought, not necessarily very seriously, but I had met this gal from the SBA, Small Business Administration, I think a subset of that, NSDC, which is basically an organization that helps you finance commercial buildings. And I do it through the Small Business Administration. So submitted my financials for the business, personal, to this gal, and they basically let me know that I could afford up to a $600,000 building. I was like, what? I was like, no way. I didn't even think about that. I didn't think it was a possibility. And I was doing well, but I just had never really wrapped my head around that number. So once I had that approval, if you will, to buy up to a $600,000 building, I started keeping my eye out for commercial buildings that were under that price range. And just, now that I was in a position to buy if I wanted to, because I had done the underwriting and got approved, I could pull the trigger if I found something I liked. The requirements for the program that I went through is 10% down. So I bought it. I ended up buying a $497,000 building. So $500,000 building, had to put $50,000 down. So that liquidity was one of the requirements to be able to make it happen. But I had been saving for something along those lines, I suppose. And because I bought the building when I did, when March 2020 hit, that was the downslide of the entire market and economy and world with COVID. The time to finance a building was actually one of the best times ever, because interest rates were as low as they've ever been, as low as they had ever been. So the financing terms were incredible. I forecasted here to, make sure I could afford something if the financing terms weren't ideal, but they were here. And so it was all that much better. And so now I pay myself, via the mortgage. My rent, if you will, is fixed because the mortgage is fixed over the period of the 25-year mortgage that I have. And I lease out the other side of the office and create some cash flow there, I suppose. And I lease out the other side of the office to an attorney that I end up, doing some business with as well. So that's been a pretty cool marriage, kind of back to the center of influence and, key components to running a good business is having good partners. So anyways, the whole situation has worked out pretty amazing.
Well, I appreciate you telling the story, and again, congrats. It's awesome to see a business owner make that move. And I love where you start with, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So like you went out and, the SBA program is not the easiest thing to understand and navigate. Yeah. And, we have a great resource in Northern Nevada that compounds that or works in conjunction with that to help you buy commercial. And, the lady who's there is awesome. And, I'm sure your market has something similar where there's either a bank or an institution that's supporting that SBA product. Go through the process, right? It doesn't hurt you to apply and understand where you're at, right? What do your financials look like today? What do they need to look like? What can you buy today? What could you buy in the future? Go understand, because to your point, right, you then knew you needed 10% down. So then that allows you to go, okay, cool. So now if I didn't have that in the bank, now my business can start saving that, and I can create either a revenue plan for that or cut some costs for that. I end up in a situation where I can purchase. And now to your mindset, if you think through, 3 to 5% increase of rent year over year on a commercial property, now you're able to lock that in. So as your business starts to increase revenue, you've now created a buffer for yourself. Basically, you're going to make 3% a year more, even if you make the same, because you're saving the bottom line, and you offset it by buying a building that you could lease out, right? And we've seen a couple of friends do that, where they've purchased buildings that have 1 or 2 units attached or around it, and now you're offsetting even more. So I appreciate that story, and I wanted to share that because I think that people get scared or don't understand or feel like it's this mountain you can't climb. It might even be the same experience of buying your first house, right? Like, in order to buy your first house, go talk to a mortgage lender, right? You don't know what you don't know. So,
I was just about to say that. Back to the personal side is, for those that don't own a home and don't know what the process looks like, start talking with a mortgage broker to find out what you can afford, find out what your credit score is, how to get that in check if it's not in good shape. So without having a plan, you plan to fail, right? Failing to have a plan to fail. It's kind of pretty applicable to this scenario as well. And on the real estate front, on the commercial building, some wonderful tax advantages to it as well. So I think back to the basics, having some understanding of the financial world is a huge deal. Having a business, buying real estate, investing in your own future, it's uber important. So
awesome. Let's talk about growth. So you've hit some good milestones recently. I saw you celebrating some stuff through your socials, saying you've hit some benchmarks. How have you gotten there? Like you didn't just fall on top of the mountain, right? Or fall into the part of the mountain you're on, right? There was a journey. Like
Yeah.
what do you contribute to your ability to grow and continue growing? What's your strategies or what's working for you?
Yeah. Um, I would like kind of relate it to farming. I don't own a farm and don't really know the process, but I imagine there's dirt and water and seed involved. And in my business, I planted a bunch of seeds for years, for 3 years, shook as many hands as I could shake, had as many conversations as I could have, followed up on all of those conversations 3, 5, 7 different times. And so that activity kind of started to breed more and more business. And so over the course of the 7 years I've been doing this, the attrition rate in my industry is like 96%. 96% of advisors that get in it aren't doing what they, aren't an advisor in 3 years, because it's a really simple business. It's just not easy. And I would think that's probably applicable to a lot of things. It's simple: manage money, help people with their financial picture, know your trade, but it's not easy in the sense that you've got to, earn someone's trust for them to come sit down with you and talk very intimately about their financial picture. And a lot of times, relationship with spouse, and just there's a lot of depth to the financial picture that's involved. So anyways, I got really good at that over the years, of course, but how the business has grown over the course of the last 3 years, maybe, where I've kind of propelled more vertically, is the referral story that's come through. Allowing clients a period of time to realize I know my trade, the planning I'm doing is helping them. And so, the clients that I've done well for and worked with for a while now are all happy to refer me. I'm still continually shaking hands, whether it's golf with friends, talking business, or going to networking events that are starting again because COVID's, kind of lifted the issues we had with the normal networking story. But always being active in the community is a big deal. And I sit on the board for a couple nonprofits and involved with my church. So I think the combination thereof, the farming, the 3 years of just real, just it being a numbers game, shake as many hands as you can, to knowing your craft and getting better at your craft, to continually shaking hands and asking for the referral, which is what a lot of people aren't very good at doing. But I think if you are in a referral business, getting good at asking is a big deal. Because sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get. So anyways, that's probably the way I'd summarize how I've gotten to where I'm at now.
Perfect. Good. Again, more great advice. And I always appreciate your vulnerability, right? It's fun to be able to again, slow down and look back at that. I love your advice in the beginning, right? Shake all the hands. Like I think so often businesses start and, they forget that without revenue, we can't function, right? You've got to go out there. You've got to network. You've got to be out in the market. You've got to let people know what you're doing and get your name out there, get your business name out there. Love that. I love once you hone your craft and you've built trust, especially once you have clientele that's been with you for, a period of time in different industries, that period of time may look different. You're right. Asking for the referral is not comfortable because I think so many people look at it as a sales pitch, right? Like it feels slimy, but at the end of the day, if you're providing tremendous value for people, why would they not want to share that value with their friends? Right. Okay. And then the other side of it is, and I've always appreciated your community involvement, right? If we're going to be pillars in our community and we're going to be building businesses and growing as professionals, like I think that one, it's a great way to give back, but that give back, the other side of it is still community exposure, right? You're still getting your name and your business out there while having a super positive impact, right? Whether that's building your church, whether that's building a nonprofit, whether that's sitting on a board, whether that's volunteering, all of those things still help you build relationships and they have a great community impact. So I love that piece as well.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. People want to do business with people that they like and trust. It's not rocket science. And, every new advisor, every new business owner is going to have the same hurdles to come, to jump over. But at the end of the day, most business is relationship business. And, that craft is also worth honing, being able to communicate to people well and communicate what you do, in a digestible manner. So anyways, yeah, it's been fun to look back and see how this has all worked out the way it has. It's not been an easy road. So, the business owners that are thinking about getting started, just know what you're getting into. But once you get over that period of time to when you're making it work and making money and knowing your skill, it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's a pretty amazing spot to be. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned the struggle, right? I think that it's probably important that we mention that, right? We're doing a highlight reel right now, right? And we're celebrating some successes and sharing those because I think there's some great lessons in them. But I don't know anyone, and I'm sure Griffin, all the clients you've talked to, I mean, their story isn't just all great, right? There are some amazing hurdles in there, and some sideways stuff, So that's a good reminder, everyone. Like, hey, if we do these interviews and you're listening and it's like, man, that all sounds great, I'm getting into it because it's going to be great and easy and it's awesome. Like, yes, it'll be those things, but you're going to get hit a few times in a lot of different ways.
Totally. Yeah. And you got to be able to rebound. And I fortunately rebounded from the hurdles as has everybody that's, made it over those challenges. But yeah, they're how you react to, the variability of just the way life works. Certain doors closing, but other doors opening up, that's important. How you take advantage of those opportunities and the adversity and how you overcome it. It's a big deal.
Well, and I love that whole idea of, right, you can't win if you quit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, if you get hit and you quit, you tap out, you didn't even give yourself a chance to win.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
If you're pivoting because you want to make a jump or change industries or do something, awesome, right? But if you're just tapping out because you've been struggling and you're not getting there, like, surround yourself with better people, go seek advice, get mentorship, right? Do something to help, right? And I know that, through some of the adversities I went through, like, you have to have that friend circle, one, right? You've got to have a friend circle that you can lean into that will remind you the journey you're on, and you've got to have mentors, right? You've got to have people that are guiding you or providing advice. When it comes to mentorship, what's your, have you had mentors? What's that look like for you? What's the importance of them?
Yeah, definitely. Specifically for my business, I have the fortunate situation of having some of the smartest people that I make, obviously a little bias here, but smartest people in the industry. And that's been essentially since I went on my own after leaving the big firm that I was at. Mentorship there, obviously at big companies like the Edward Joneses, the Morgan Stanleys, it exists, just maybe in a little different fashion. But after going on my own, I created those opportunities, if you will, or when presented the opportunity, dove in. And yeah, I've had some very incredible mentors that have done what I'm trying to do, build a successful advisory firm. And there's a lot of depth to what I do. And so there's a lot of different mentorships that exist for different reasons. But yeah, having someone give you some sort of idea of what the roadmap to success looks like, and someone that's willing to talk to you and spend some time with you is huge deal. And I hope to provide the same. And I have to some extent provided that mentorship to younger kids, right? I mean, I'm still a kid, but 20, 22, 23, 24-year-olds that are getting out of school, that maybe want to get in this industry. I've essentially kind of created somewhat of a roadmap for a lot of people to say, hey, here's how the world works, especially in this industry. Here's the different ways to be successful in this industry. And there's benefits and trade-offs to all the directions. But yeah, having someone that gave me that roadmap, especially as I hit certain hurdles and had different adversities that I was challenged with, is a really big deal. So
I like what you said in there too about they've done what you want to do. I think that there's a group of mentors that need to fall into that bucket. So if you're seeking mentorship, right, and you have a goal, a path, a vision of what you want to accomplish, somewhere in there you need to align with a mentor who's done that. And I think that helps because they've hit all the walls you're probably going to hit. and you may still hit the wall, but if they can say, okay, cool, we're at this plateau, now let's navigate. It's nice to have someone who can tell you to take 2 steps right and 1 step forward and you're done, right?
Yep.
Versus staring at the wall going, cool, haven't seen this before.
Yep.
And then you mentioned something else in there too, that you have a lot of mentors for a lot of reasons, right? And I think that, you know, that becomes something people need to hear is in different parts of your life, you may have mentors for different reasons. And, you know, you may have those may change, right? You may have a financial mentor that's really guiding you through some of those early financial decisions. You may have a spiritual mentor who's guiding you forever or during a really interesting or challenging time or emotional challenge in your life. Like, and then you may have all the different business mentors, which again, take all the buckets of business, like there, you could get mentorship in all of them, right? So I think that you got to really like self-assess where you're at and be open and honest. And I think that's the other part of mentorship, right? Is we can't have mentors if we're not willing to listen, because what's the point, right? And especially if you're paying, right? Like if some of these mentorships are good relationships, maybe you don't pay. Some of these you may end up writing checks for and being part of programs. Like, guys, don't write a check and not listen.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Good advice falling on deaf ears is unfortunately not, you know, the end result is nothing changes. And you know, that happens in my industry sometimes, talking with people, friends, family, clients, whatever. Yeah. Good advice only goes as far as how well it's been received and if it's been listened to. And yeah, anyways, it's funny you said that because I've been dealing with some of that.
Well, I mean, what's interesting there is I like to call it the consulting curse, right? So if you take a consultative approach to anything you're doing, your industry, my industry, whatever, right? You're going to have to hear it 19 ways. Right. And, you know, I have a good friend and I clearly remember them calling and saying, hey, I'm really struggling with this. What's your thought? And I gave them a thought and I was like really confident that it was really good advice because I've been through the scenario. Right. Yeah. And then I remember like, oh, awesome. That's great. And they get off and you just watch them keep struggling. And then I remember like 3 weeks later, they called me and said, oh my God, I was talking to so-and-so and they said to do this and it's epic. And I did it 2 days ago and blah, blah, blah. And it's working. And you're just sitting there staring at like, cool. I gave you that same advice 3 weeks ago. Right. But like the timing has to be right as well. Right. So I think that's another thing we all have to realize is like, even great advice that doesn't align with our mission, vision, values, or time may not be applicable advice today, right? So it may be something that we can learn, but maybe we can't apply it right away. And I know I've experienced that in mentorship where like a mentor is like, let's do this. And it's like, yeah, let's go. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, maybe I'm not ready for that yet.
Right. Totally. I can relate.
I love that. That's kind of all I had on the business conversation I want to have. Like, I really want to talk about the building. I want to get some of your perspective. What other are tips, tricks, things that relate to you, or what's maybe a struggle? We haven't really talked about that. So what's maybe something you're struggling with currently on your business journey? What's something that you're trying to overcome?
I would say the challenge that I'm facing is a good one, but like growing pains, I've been a yes man since day one, always saying yes, both personally and in business. But on the business side, you know, at some point, you know, when you say yes to someone, it's kind of like saying no to someone else at the end of the day. And so trying to figure out what yes, you know, if I could have a quantity of yeses, I need to allocate them appropriately. And that's hard for me. You know, I've really never said no to managing money, regardless of how much or little they have. Never said no to an opportunity to sit down with someone just to help them, just cause. And it's boded well for me to never say, to not saying no, but there's growing pains that I'm now realizing because of it. So if I want to continue to say yes, then I just have to hire. I have to hire administration. I'd have to hire more advisors like myself to be able to service those yeses. And is that a direction I want to go? Do I want to create a big firm with, you know, and step into a role of managing people? I don't know. I'm not sure I'm interested in that, but I'm also not saying no to that. I'm not closing the door on that opportunity, but because of the, you know, not sure which direction I want to go, I'm realizing these growing pains. So yeah, I'd say it's a good problem, but having some mentorship, which I have, and I'm talking to about this situation is a really big deal. And now that I kind of have some perspective on how these routes look, because I've talked to both sides, now I'm just trying to I'm struggling with myself to figure out, what I'm really more interested in doing.
What do
And
you want? Yeah.
yeah, what do I want?
What's your path? Right. And
Exactly.
it's awesome that you said that, that clearly applies to your business, right? But I think that there's a lot of ways that applies to a lot of businesses where you hit this point on the journey, and customer size is usually a conversation I see people have, because that puts strain on capacity, right?
Yep.
How many customers can I take? Who's the ideal? What's my bandwidth to do it? Do I hire to take them? Do I not? And, I'm glad to hear that that's something you're having a conversation on, because don't just run. That's a big pivot in a business, right? Do I scale up through staff? Do I scale up through partnerships? Or do I choose not to scale up and maybe just hone my, like, specialize, right? Like I'm gonna serve a certain clientele, a niche or a size that allows me to generate the wealth I want to generate. And, maybe doesn't grow a team. All of those are correct answers. There's no wrong answer, because again, it's your journey, right? Everyone we talk to might have a different perspective on that. So that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you talked to both sides, right? Let's go see the real life. And I think that's some sage advice for, like, the whole interning mindset, right? Like, I think we talked about that on our last one. Like, if you're going to go into an industry, go experience the industry, because maybe it's not the industry you want to go into. And the other side of that is, I said yes, and we could apply this to, like, volunteer time. I know when I started my business, I said yes to everything, man. And that wasn't just clients. It was freaking everything, right? Like I was hungry to grow. And that looked like, that point where you're just overcommitted everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Every volunteer opportunity, every board position, you're donating time, you're hiring people because you're empathetic with them. And you kind of wake up in this moment going, man, I'm stretched all over the place and I've got to relever. So, like, which of these decisions is worthwhile? Like, do I want to put more time into this nonprofit or this church or my family, or, in your case, right, you've got baby number 2 on the way, right? How does that change decisions? Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So
that's one of the reasons I'm having that thought process, is because I've got to be able to slice out a little bit more personal time. And if I'm saying yes to everybody over here, I mean, there's some conflict there going on with my time. I mean, time is, at the end of the day, the resource that is being stretched. It's nothing else other than the time that I'm trying to figure out how we create more of it. And it means sacrificing something else.
Yeah, what goes away, right? You got to sleep, you got to eat, you got to have family time. Like, all those things have to fit into 24 hours.
Exactly.
And you're not going to get your kids' time back, right? I think that's something that's important, and I think all of parents need to pay attention to that, right? Like, there's a moment when it's frustrating, right? But there's also that moment where you got to realize, like, when they graduate and move out, you don't get that back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. And I think I've been pretty good about that, but yeah, baby number 2 creates another, that's different.
Well, good. Well, I think that's a good thing to kind of end on, is if you guys are at a point where you're feeling stretched, it's okay to slow down and just recalibrate. Like, what's important to you? Where are you at? I know a lot of our personal friend circle are having babies number 1. And I mean, that alone will change things, right? That's going to change your motivation. It's going to change how you look at legacy. It's going to change how you look at assets. Because now it's not just you, right? Now you're trying to create a future for this thing that you just brought into the world. And I know that changed a lot of the ways I looked at things. So, if that's where you're at, guys, slow down, take a minute, recalibrate. That's perfectly fine. And give yourself time. Give yourself time and grace and patience to go through that process and land what feels good for you.
Yep. Agreed. Good advice.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you taking time for part 2 and talking business a little bit and sharing some of your own journey. Again, congratulations on the journey and success. I'm excited for the next decade of growth and seeing where we end up and having this conversation then.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch this.
All right, man. I'll see you on the next golf course.
All right.
Later.